If you want to participate, contact me at ordinarywomenpodcast@gmail.com. I'm sure you have great projects to brag about. You can also follow me and message me on Instagram at ordinarywomenpodcast, on Twitter at ordinarywomenpc, or on Facebook on the page Ordinary Women. Hello everyone, welcome to Ordinary Women. Today we are with Jill. Hey Jill.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good, so happy to be here.
I'm so excited to interview you today.
Same, this is heaven because it's basically just conversations we already have and now we're just recording it so we can listen to it separately.
Yes. Can you start by presenting yourself?
I'm Jill, I'm 27. I live in New York, very fortunately, but I get to come back here to London quite a lot, which is so special because I used to live here. Yeah, that's kind of me.
Can you tell us something unusual about yourself?
Yes, I can. I thought a fun one would be to share with everyone that I worked at the Vagina Museum. This is a bit of a plug more for the Vagina Museum than for my unusual hobbies. But the Vagina Museum is an amazing museum in London that actually just closed its doors in Camden due to really bullshit things going on with like replacing the space with, I think, just like a chain store or something, which is obviously the most frustrating thing ever. But Lucy has been to visit the Vagina Museum lots of times, and I was volunteering as a front of house person, so basically just like making sure everything in the museum went according to safety protocols and people were happy and understanding the exhibit and all sorts of things like that. And also I got to talk about vaginas all day, which was great and so fun. I think that
must be the best part.
It was honestly heaven, and really happy because you would see little kids in there learning about gynecological anatomy and things that I certainly never learned about probably until my early 20s. So it's really inspiring to see especially kids in there doing that learning because it's like, oh yes, things are changing even when we don't feel like it. So more of an unusual place than an unusual fact about me, but worth sharing.
Definitely. Was there any fact that you learned in that museum that really struck you?
Lots of things.
Yeah.
I think one of the things, and I don't remember the exact fact, so we should definitely Google this later, but
I'll make a side note.
Yeah. One of the things I learned about, and there's some crazy fact with this, but it's that a man claims that he discovered the clitoris because the first sort of citing in academic journals of the clitoris is not until, I think, the early 90s, which is obviously outrageous.
Early 90s.
I'm pretty sure. So
that's madness.
Yeah. Totally correct me in show notes if I'm wrong, but I believe that is true. And the funniest thing is before that, a man claimed he discovered the clit as he was researching like women's mental health, and he claimed that discovering the clit cured psychotic breakdowns. Which is like, yeah, probably did, but you didn't discover it. However, yeah, I understand why people might have been struggling and feeling better after the clit was quote unquote discovered. I mean, I learned tons of stuff like that, which is crazy to learn because it's like, oh my God, how was the clit not cited in any academic journal for so long? How did a man think he discovered the clit? Blah, blah, blah. But also those things in a way are really empowering to learn because we're taking those stories and telling them now. So we get to share them and make sure that in the future they are known and that people don't think that a man discovered the clit.
I think the two facts that struck me the most at the Vagina Museum was one, that some people think that Coca-Cola can act as a contraceptive after sex.
Yeah.
Which is so dangerous.
Yeah. The way that the museum presents that is so great because it literally, there's just a can of Coca-Cola there. So you're like presented with the absurdity of it. Of course, that is not true. But also, of course, we believe it, or people have believed it for so long because we have had to. We don't have any other educational resources, and this is for people of all genders, about gynecological anatomy. So why would anyone know? I mean, there are so many myths or tales about various ways to induce your own abortion and things like that, and those exist because women have had to do that because it hasn't been medically included in our lives and our rights. So all of these things come from really scary truths of people with vulvas experiences. But yeah, that totally shocked me because I had never heard of that fact either. That definitely, fortunately, I never heard of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other one was the amount of young women getting vaginoplasty. Is that the name?
Oh my God.
In the UK.
Yeah.
I honestly didn't even know it was a thing.
Me neither.
I'll, again, side note here to get the actual percentage because I can't remember. But, like, before 18, it's, like, more than 25%, is it?
Oh my God. Something, like, along those lines that is just, like, I so don't want to believe it, but also I do. And that is particularly outrageous to me because I don't know if it is just based on my age or the context that I grew up in or anything. And by no means did I have an inclusive, comprehensive sex education growing up in any way. But I didn't have the insecurities around what my vulva looks like as much as at least what I'm gathering that like younger generations do. And so I don't know what that discrepancy is, but it's really startling and sad.
Yeah, completely. No, I feel the exact same. On that note, was there an event that made you realize you are a woman?
Honestly, I can't think of a specific event because being a girl was so put onto me in my life as a kid, I think as many people would feel about gender in general, that I don't really think of any events where I realized, oh, I'm a girl or I'm a woman until I sort of woke up to the fact that there were negatives about being a woman or people were accessing things that I wasn't able to access because I'm a woman. I never felt what many people do feel, maybe feeling out of place in their presentation or clothing. That stuff always I felt comfortable in. So I think that I had that great privilege of not being aware of gender at all until, I don't know, certain things as a kid. Like one side of my family is very traditionally Italian American. And so the dads always go to the living room and watch TV while all the girls and women are in the kitchen cooking. And it's really interesting because I obviously by principle I'm like, this is total bullshit, what the fuck.
Yeah.
But also it's how my family has been forever. And I think as a kid that was like one of the first instances where even in the domestic space, which for me fortunately was a very safe space, I know for many women domestic spaces are actually the least safe space, but that was where I started realizing those dynamics of, oh, I have to go help the moms versus play with the dads and moments like that.
You know what? That reminds me of when I was a kid. We would go with my cousins and we would go on holidays to my grand-aunt and grand-uncle. It was like 6 or 7 of us, I think. So 4 girls and then 3 or 4 boys. And it was always us setting the table. And one day, I was like 8, I think. One day, my great-uncle calls us and says like, girls, come set the table. And I answered, why is it always girls? Why don't boys? They were slightly younger than us, but not that young.
Right. Like it wasn't an age thing.
No, it was not an age thing, definitely. So I answered, why is it always girls who do that? Why don't the boy do that for once? And then we actually had to calm down and he didn't yell at me, but he told me off for being insolent. For being insolent.
And like disrespectful.
This is insolent. You're a child, basically you should do what I do.
Oh my God. Yeah, listen to your elders sort of.
I was fuming and my sister got my back and said that it was just a joke. I think I could have been punished with that.
Yeah, for even just asking the question.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, why as we get older, we don't ask questions. And I am not a huge fan of kids near me, but we should really be looking to kids for this sort of wisdom and inquisitive nature, because kids are usually the ones asking, but why? Which is like the most rebellious question you can ask. And obviously because of instances like that, we don't ask it as we get older because it's like, well, how much am I willing to risk here for saying, oh, I don't want to set the table? Because it's not even about setting the table. It's about so much more,
fairness.
Of course.
Why is it always women who
right.
do that?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that another experience, unfortunately, that made me realize I was a girl or a woman was gaining the awareness that my body was being sexualized and knowing that it was boys and men who did that to me and not the other way around. Even in like locker rooms as kids, it's like girls weren't talking about things that we think of as stereotypically boys' locker room talk. And I think from a young age, that was something that I knew, that men looked at our bodies, but we didn't necessarily look at theirs.
Even in the representation, if you think about like lockers, stuff like that, it's always boys who will go to the girls' changing room and toilets to try to look. Never have I ever, before this conversation, I never even thought about the contrary.
Yeah. And of course we didn't, because I would be so scared, because the thing that we're taught about entering a group of boys, maybe when you're in exercise clothes or something, or anything really, you could be in a potato sack and it would be the same.
Oh, yeah.
Is that you are, again, quote unquote, asking for it in some way or looking for it, and it being abuse in some way, because I think most people would feel that that is what you're walking into when you walk into a locker room of boys.
True.
So that's another kind of sad way that I realized I was a girl and a woman. But there are also lots of happy ways. There are lots of things about being a girl and growing into a woman that I think are unique to my experience. And I don't necessarily know if I were conditioned in a more masculine way, would I have these things? I don't know. But the biggest one being friendships with other women. I think that it's a blessing and a curse that we're taught that women are meant to be nurturing and meant to be empathetic and understanding, because I think that can really hold us back in some ways in the world, because men don't have to do the same.
Yeah.
But I also think that I've gained so much by being that way and developing friendships within that context. I think that's given me an amazing sort of chosen family of my own.
Definitely. Did you grow up having a feminine role model? Or more than one, actually?
Definitely. And I think, I mean, kind of a corny answer, but my mom is that and more. And especially as I get older and learn more and more about the challenges that women face as women in general, mothers face, working mothers face, both working in the domestic sphere unpaid and working in a job that technically contributes to a nation's economic value, which those should all be included in that, but whatever. That's a different conversation. I think that's only made her more of a role model to me. I definitely just thought she did all of that stuff with ease as a young kid. And then as I have grown into an adult and learn more about her as a person and not just a mom, I have realized that, first of all, she works around the clock, because I'm 27 years old and still need her in every way. So her job is still full-time, and she's not getting paid for it, so sorry about that. But I have only sort of thought of her as more and more of a role model as I've grown, because I've learned what hard work she's had to do to give me the life I have, and also to just sustain her own life and make it. She put herself through college. She married my dad and had me, and my dad and my mom are still together, but my dad epitomizes some of the toxic masculinity. He's quite distanced from us emotionally. And I realized that my mom has been my emotional rock for my entire life and shown me that I can work. And she always taught me, don't depend on a man, you always have to have your own income. And I never really thought those lessons were valuable until I became an adult. And I was like, oh, I get why she kept nailing those messages down into my head as a kid. So, yeah, it's mom.
Oh, so sweet. And what did you get from her? So you talked a bit about having emotional support and this taught as get your income and stuff. What would you say is the main learnings you got from her?
I think now, I mean, besides all of the sort of life lessons she's taught me as my mom, I think as a holistic human, she has taught me so much about the way women experience the world and don't ask questions, because that doesn't necessarily sound like a good thing. Basically the strength of women to be given so many burdens to just toss on their back, like weight of me as a kid growing up. And I also had various mental illnesses as a kid and now, so carrying that on her back and trying to figure that out as a mother, trying to do the admin of being a mother and working full time, and also just teach me how to be a person in the world. I mean, she's just taught me about the strength that women have to be able to do that, and also maybe shown me that my life doesn't have to look a certain way. She's taught me that her life has looked that way, and there are some things that are maybe a product of her time or what she wanted when she was younger, but she always encourages me to take the bits of life that I want to pursue and not pursue things because I should do them, which is incredibly valuable to me. And I think without my mom's support in that, it would be really difficult for me to be motivated to follow that path.
Thank you for sharing this.
Love you, Mom.
Oh. And do you currently have a feminine role model?
Definitely. So many. All of my friends, my best friends, are all my role models. Every one of my friends that I've collected from all these different areas of my life are so inspiring to me in different ways. I love seeing the work that my friends put out into the world to show their values, and it inspires me to show my values somehow in the world. I think more on a different level than my immediate friends. There is an amazing woman named Amy Richards who is absolutely my role model. She is a writer, she's a producer, she's a creator of all sorts of things. She runs a feminist speakers bureau, she produces documentaries, and all of these things she does with a distinctly feminist perspective. And she just is an incredible person. She's hilarious, fun to be around, and she does all of these things without sort of adhering to the role of, oh, I'm the boss, or she's just creating the work she wants to create in a feminist way and making the world a better place, which is all I could ever want to do. She's written amazing books. Yeah, she's just a fabulous creative and person.
And do you have one lesson from her?
That's difficult. I mean, so many.
So many, yeah.
She has really been such an example, and I'm sure not just to me, but to many, many people, about how to incorporate feminism and activism and really your just beliefs into your everyday life. So whether that's at work or whether it's in your free time or all of the above, she's such an amazing example of that. She runs this program called Feminist Camp, which is in a few different places, but she's based in New York, and a lot of the sessions have been in New York. And it's basically a week where people, and it's geared towards college students, but it's people of all ages, can come and have all these sessions with different amazing activists and professionals and people who are doing amazing social justice work, and talk to them about how to do the same and get inspired and get connected with other feminists. And I feel like that experience that Amy founded is like so a representation of the lessons I've learned from her. Connect with people, talk to as many people as you can and learn from them, and incorporate your beliefs into your daily life. It's not just once a week I do this and that's my good deed, or I donate here and that's my good deed. It's really like a practice in your life.
Yeah. I think I got that from you. Being conscious about who wrote the books you're reading and making sure that you're reading like 50-50 men and women, making sure that you're not only reading right writers, etc.
Totally. Like little things like that honestly I feel like until you talk about it with someone, you don't even think about, because it's just so ingrained into our lives. Look at our like syllabi as kids in school. We are so used to just being presented with like Shakespeare, this white guy. And I did not question it for my entire life. And I was like a really involved student and really loved school and loved reading. And I never questioned the fact that there were barely any women, definitely barely any women of color in my syllabi. So yeah, just little things like that I think is so important for us to do, because it's not a hard ask.
That's not
it's
a hard,
enriching
yeah.
and fun. Yeah.
Do you think the lack of representation of women in society impacted you growing up? And if so, how?
Totally, in like every way. And I think looking back, it's so alarming to me almost that it took me so many years to even become aware of that lack of representation. The sort of cliche example of it is like, if you Google scientist, a picture of Albert Einstein pops up, and that is then what people think of as scientist. And that is so the way I grew up. And yeah, now it's just this big unlearning process that I and everyone is having to do, where it's like, no, a scientist doesn't have to look like an elderly white guy who went to some prestigious university and all this stuff. Actually, it's probably better for the world if we have a diverse set of scientists who can contribute various experiences. So, of course it affected me as a kid, but I think I was naive and didn't ever critically think about it until I was a young adult, and then I had whatever my aha moment was and was like, oh my God, everything is not what it seems. Now I have to try and unlearn what I know, and that is how I feel about it now.
Enough talking about other people. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about your projects. So
yay!
Excited. Yeah, what's the project you want to talk about?
So I have two, and they're quite interrelated, but the one it makes sense to start with is the one that was chronologically first. It was me figuring out, as I was volunteering at the Feminist Library in London. I started volunteering there, some context. Started volunteering there when I first moved to London a few years ago, basically because I was like, I want to do something feminist and also get to meet new people and explore a new area. So, found the Feminist Library, reached out, and they were like, perfect, we're actually in the middle of moving and we need people to help catalog all of our books. So essentially what I was doing for all day on Saturday with my amazing friend, Catherine, it was basically just the two of us, we would take a stack of books, catalog it in the Feminist Library's cataloging system, which is different than most libraries' cataloging system. You might be familiar with the Dewey Decimal System. I don't know if that's just an American thing, but that's how our libraries are sorted. It turns out Dewey was a huge racist and anti-Semitic person, and probably along those lines, didn't love women and whatever, so...
What?
Yeah, so that means every library's cataloging system and organizational system is inherently imbued with those views. Even when, of course, libraries are going to now have women's study sections and things like that, but the original structure of it doesn't just disappear. So that is something I quickly learned when I started doing the cataloging, and I was like, oh, this is so cool how we catalog it by feminist issue rather than by author's last name or something else. Or we have a system for cataloging zines, which usually go uncatalogued and things like that. So, was learning all this stuff, started getting really frustrated about the whole situation, and was also getting frustrated at the fact that we were doing this cataloging at all. The reason we were doing it was because the Feminist Library, which was in Southwark and still is, was being evicted by the council who put it there in the first place. The building was going to be turned into condos. So, this was all really infuriating, and there was a really long sort of fight to save the Feminist Library, and eventually the council put them into a different building in Peckham. That still didn't solve the problem of, okay, now we have to move all of the books. This is a collectively organized nonprofit, so there is no hierarchy in the way the Feminist Library is run, which is a beautiful feminist thing, but it also means doing things like having money to just casually move don't happen due to the nature of the library and how it's organized. So all these things were layering on top of each other and really pissing me off. And so I ended up doing my own research about it and basically gathering data to prove that having feminist community spaces, such as the Feminist Library, are essential to neighborhoods and districts within cities, not just because obviously they provide the educational resources of whatever a library is holding, for example, but they also provide a really safe, inclusive feminist space for people who might need it. People who are experiencing domestic violence during the day and need a safe feminist space to go can go to the Feminist Library, and they might be sitting there next to a person doing feminist research on domestic violence. So there are so many different reasons that this space is essential that are of course self-evident to a lot of people who care about these spaces, but aren't to a lot of people as well. So I basically published some research proving that and presented it at some conferences, and now it is a resource that can be used to be cited. So basically community spaces can have a piece of published work that place can refer to be like, here's proof that a space like ours is actually benefiting this community. It's not a waste of space. It's not going unused. It's actually extremely beneficial and probably making everyone's goals more achievable. So that is one project that I really took on. I mean, that was 2 years of my life pretty much, and I'm obviously still really passionate about it. And it brings me to my next sort of project that I'm working on right now, which is doing some archiving for one of my fave feminists, Gloria Steinem, who is a brilliant mind and has lived and continues to live a brilliant life. And I am working with an amazing colleague of mine named Amanda to archive her life's work. So anything from press she was mentioned in, to her writing, to miscellaneous ephemera, all of that I'm digitizing and archiving. So it's kind of similar to what I was doing at the Feminist Library. And yeah, just a very special experience. And that is still in progress.
Every time you talk about that, this is amazing.
Thank you. I mean, I don't think I would have realized the importance of archiving in a feminist way without the experience I had with the Feminist Library. And it's so essential. And it's just like, if we don't do this, the history is erased. So we have to do this. So everyone make sure that your library has a system that can digitize and also has plastic sheet coverings for the printout things that you want to save, like the original copies of stuff, because those are very, very delicate. So we should all be saving them in special plastic cover things.
Good tip, thank you. I'll keep that in mind if I ever
come across original paperwork of something.
For my future writings.
Exactly. No, yes. Totally. I want that preserved in a temperature moderated thing in plastic coverings.
And why are you proud of these projects?
I mean, I guess for the reasons just mentioned, that it's preservation of history, it's preservation of stories that without proper archiving will go untold. And so much of the world we live in is a result of untold stories of people who should have had the mic all along. Even in feminism, so many stories we talk about, or even the perception of feminism now, some people really say that feminism seems like a middle-class white women's movement, and that is really devastating, obviously, for so many reasons. Biggest one being, and I learned this from Gloria, that it renders invisible the Black women who literally created feminism. So it's like, if we don't tell these stories and have it accessible to people, people will continue being rendered invisible. So that is why I am proud of this.
That's very cool. That kind of reminds me of what we were talking about, like Christopher Columbus discovering America, and if native, their stories are a lot vocal, right? Rather than written.
Yep, totally. And it's such a devastating thing for the world because it makes it, not that oral history is a devastating thing for the world, oral history is incredible, but the fact that because there is no value placed on those stories in the powerful society, I don't know how to phrase that, but basically, the dominating society right now, we miss out on those stories which are filled with wisdom and ways that I think that a lot of us want to be living. Native people have lived for so long and really embodied values that I think a lot of people care about.
And contributes to silence them in a way. And there's this domination of white people, basically.
Exactly. Yep.
That sucks. Thank you for being part of the job that makes the world a little bit better.
It is a pleasure, truly.
How much time was there between the first time you thought about starting working as a feminist library or like in a feminist environment and the moment when you actually started to work there?
So at the Feminist Library, I started working there early 2018, around then, 2018. And I've started doing archival work for Gloria just a few months ago. So it's really been like a constant thing that I've done in my life, this archival work and preservation of history, but in different forms and obviously in different cities. The Feminist Library is in London. Gloria's archives are based in New York. Yeah, so it's been a few years of that. And of course, other day jobs and things in my life have come and gone in that time as well, but this has stayed very consistently important to me.
And so, did you take long between the moment when you first thought, oh, I want to start working in this place or in this type of place, and the moment when you actually started?
I think it was probably a few months. Because it was like after I talked to a few people and just like I'd been going in every week, and I have an amazing mentor named Elena who kind of encouraged me to pursue this as something more than just venting about it to her and maybe do something productive with it. So thanks, Elena. But she was the person who really was like, this is something you care about and there is something that needs to be proven here that people don't know clearly. And you have the ability and the privilege right now to prove it. So she gave me some light to see with all of it because I think I was being really pessimistic and ranting a lot. Like every time I would come back from the Feminist Library, I'd be like, and this is such bullshit, how this is happening, and this is happening, and how is the library meant to move, and now how does a library rent a truck when we're trying to just stay afloat and all of this stuff. And Elena was the person who helped me channel that into something productive. But it probably took a few months before anything productive happened. As it tends to be with me.
Yeah, but also that time of reflection is, in a way, productive, I guess. That's where,
Totally.
Yeah.
And anger, again, learned this from Gloria Steinem. Anger is an extremely useful emotion, and it can be like a fire starter in a lot of ways for us. It's not the emotion we want to carry through, and we don't want to dissipate our empathy and love with anger, but it's good to be angry because it's indicating that we care about something and that something's wrong.
Definitely. One of my next questions was if there was any important figure. So I guess you mentioned two already.
So many important figures. I mean, Elena, who literally was like, okay, good to be angry, but let's do something. Honestly, I'm really fortunate that many people who I'm surrounded by in my life, whether by family in terms of my blood relatives or my chosen family and friends, are all extremely supportive and in various ways have helped me on this journey. So it's hard to say just one person. I think the person I idolize the most might be Gloria, but it's because she's such an icon, maybe. Of course, she's worth idolizing, obviously. But in that same token, I also idolize my friends equally as much because they help me along this journey in like a very tangible way and support me when I'm feeling like really angry or depressed or not like fighting for stuff is worth it because the world can be really dark sometimes. So I have my friends to thank for getting me through that.
That's sweet. What's the main challenges you faced?
So many in so many different contexts. Everything from like asshole men at work, which is like unfortunately kind of a universal experience for women who work in offices. I think at some point you'll probably encounter a man who thinks they're smarter than you and thinks they can explain your job to you and all of that stuff.
So many times.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I think that is something I've dealt with a lot. But now that I feel that I am confident enough in myself that I know that's about them and not me, so it doesn't bother me as much anymore.
Yeah.
I think the things that really, really bother me are about the physical safety of women, like walking home at night, feeling like you can take public transit alone at certain times or what. There's just so many times where women are not safe to be in public, and that's something that I think I wasn't expecting. I was expecting it because everyone gives girls toolkits for how to, quote, be safe in public, like hold keys between your fingers and make sure you're not wearing anything slutty and blah, 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 and all the things that are nonsense. So I think I was expecting things in that way, but I wasn't expecting to feel so unsafe in so many places and be so aware that most of what we consider public spaces are completely dominated by white men.
Yeah, you were saying, thinking about when women are not safe in the public space, but is there any time we really are safe?
Exactly. And that's the importance of spaces like the Feminist Library, because it's like domestic violence. It's, I think, the number one cause of women's deaths. It's definitely like, there's some crazy statistic. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I remember recently reading it and it was like comparing the rate of domestic violence to how many soldiers died in the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. And the domestic violence rates were like sky high in comparison. And it's just like, oh my God. So it's like women are not safe at home, but also then they go outside and are not safe. So I think that's something that continues to devastate me, challenge me, surprise me, but also in a way empower me, because I think that's like the anger thing that's like frustrating, but maybe will make me more productive and ready to fight for more spaces for people to actually feel safe.
Yeah. What's something that was easier than you expected?
That is really difficult. What's something for you that's easier than expected? Maybe your experience will spark some ideas of mine.
I think knowing that I would be recorded and asking all the questions and stuff, I think I don't know how to do that. But then actually, well, because you're only asking the questions. And I guess as I'm always eager to learn about other people, I always have questions about what they like.
Yeah.
Someone says a sentence and I have 1,000 questions already.
Yeah.
So I guess in that way, it was actually easier than I thought, because I would be like, oh, but what if these questions that I prepared are not enough? But actually, as we talk, it is discussion.
Yeah.
So I just like, oh, I'm interested in that. I'm going to ask, and that's it.
Yeah.
That was easier.
That's so interesting, because it's like you are a conversationalist and you are a person who is so curious and asks so many questions. So it's like, how much conditioning has to go into our brains for you to be afraid of, like, by your own accord to make this situation happen, are still nervous about the mic and maybe the tech aspects and, you know, making an interview happen. It's really crazy. And I don't know if that's like imposter syndrome or what, or if whatever it is. Sure, there's some name for it, but it's like really, really crazy. And I think for me as well, not necessarily with the same example of talking in front of the mic, but I think there's plenty of things that for my whole life I thought I couldn't do. And then I did them and I was like, oh wait, I can do them. Like speaking in front of people, I used to hate speaking in front of people, which I know for you would probably be hard to believe because I love talking in general and I don't care who I'm talking to really, and I just find it really fun to like be in front of people and lead a group conversation or whatever. But that was so not something that came naturally to me as a girl. I think because we were told to be quiet, so we were. And I think now that I'm in environments that nurture that, I'm like, oh wait, I'm actually good at that, and it's fun, and it benefits other people sometimes too. So like, there you go.
Yeah.
It's such a multi-layered thing because we're taught that it should be scary. And we're also taught that we should behave in a certain way. So like blurting out things, unacceptable, of course, because that's impolite and that's not like, I don't even know if anyone ever used the word ladylike. I'm sure it was used, but it's just not what girls did. So that's not what I did. But like inside, there were so many thoughts and anxieties and everything going on. And now that I allow myself to blurt things out sometimes or give myself the grace to participate, I've actually found that it's very empowering, particularly when I'm around people who also feel that same way. Yeah, lots of discoveries like that as I've grown into a woman that I didn't know about myself as a kid because I don't think I ever knew that I could give myself the space to learn it. And now that I've learned so many things, I'm like, oh, I'm good at this. Or, oh, I suck at this. And that's okay. Like, I can suck at whatever it is. Whereas that was never an option as a kid because it was like, gotta be perfect. Where now I allow myself to not be because I know that that's unattainable. And lots of lessons just in terms of giving yourself space to learn them. Whereas there was none before.
That's so important. We should all keep that in mind at all time.
Yeah.
I think I don't really have any more questions about this project, but maybe you want to add something about this or about something else?
I guess just thank you for having me.
Well, then thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. It was so interesting to listen to you and talk with you.
Thank you.
And as the guest, you get the last word. The mic is yours.
My last word / concept, I guess the word I'm going to choose is circle. That is the word I want people to take away. But there's a little bit of a concept behind it that I learned from my star idol, Gloria Steinem. And she always shares this when she is on any platform, literally or figuratively. Whenever she's doing a speaking engagement, you know, she'll be sitting on a stage with one person and maybe having an interview or a conversation. And then there'll be an audience or the listeners or whatever it is. And she always says, imagine if we were in a circle. I wish we were. I wish we weren't in this already pre-structured hierarchical system, which is patriarchal by nature. So it's already leaving voices out inherently. But imagine we're in a circle and that every person is able to share their thoughts in equal measure. And I think that's just a really special way to think about all interactions. Like imagine that it wasn't structured in the sort of like, this is the dominant role and this isn't. This is the more important role and this isn't. But rather think of us all as a circle of individuals who have experiences to share with each other and learn from. So, word is circle.